Okay, what is up guys, my name is Rich T. We're going to have a very quick tutorial video for you today. This is something I was thinking about putting together for a while actually, and the question just came up again yesterday on the forum, so we're going to have a look at tweaking POVs. Now in my setup, you might have seen from other videos on my channel, the way I've got things is where the apron would normally be in the game for a lot of people, I've got a arcade stick and buttons. So for every visual pinball table that I'm adding, what I'm actually doing is cropping out the in-game apron so that that is more of a one-to-one, and so basically I don't see the apron, but the plunger sits where it would be in real life. So for others that do this, you might need to go through the same thing, but this tweaking of POV should apply to all scenarios. So the way I go about things when I add a new game, and the example I'll look at here today is Lost World, which has just come out. This is from Board, one of the, I would say, premier table constructors in the hobby. His work's frankly outstanding. So yeah, the first thing I'll already do, you add of course your table into the tables folder. I'll always run it first just to see how it looks. This is my back glass monitor, by the way, it's loading up on just for the purposes of this. Cool, so it's found the back glass, it's loaded the table. There you go. Now for me, I want to tweak this in some way, shape or form, at least to get rid of the apron, but also I might try and level it out a little bit as well for my own setting. Your mileage may vary, and of course everyone's cab is different, all those disclaimers. Also point it up and run a ball through real quick just to confirm it's playing. Cool, looks good. Now, this table's beautiful, by the way. Now for me, this is just a side note really, you've got this D&D scores, and it's also on the back glass, which I don't personally prefer. So we'll quickly get rid of the D&D scores while we're in the game. Press F1 on the keyboard. Now you'll see in full screen mode my mouse is missing, which is annoying, but what I can do instead is use the tab key on the keyboard. You can see that's moving through. And then when you get to the option you want, you press space to toggle it. So use external D&D, press space, that's that gone. Press return and that will OK. And it advises you the change won't be made until you restart, which is fine. So we'll click OK. So now I'm going to jump back into the editor so we can take a look at the actual POV itself. I'll press Q to jump back to the editor twice, back into editor mode. Now the first thing I'll always do prior to tweaking the POV is make a backup of the table. You could just export the POV in its default state, but I'm lazy. I just copy the table over to a temporary folder, so we're just going to right click and copy, find a temporary folder on my desktop. See, I was going to have a go at Cactus Canyon, which is a pain in the ass, and I said I'll paste that in, and then we've got a way back if we need it, so always have a way back. So to edit the POV, you're going to press F6. This will open the table into the POV edit mode. You can see in the top left hand corner of the playfield, that'll do its thing with the ROM. Well, you can also see for a start that the DMD isn't displaying now, so that's that first thing sorted. The text you might or might not be able to read. It's in the top left, and this shows you each of the functions that you can tweak here. So you've got inclination, which is what that is. Now what I'm doing is I'm using the flipper buttons left and right to make these adjustments. So inclination, I'll actually level that off a little bit now, so I know that's what I'm going to do later. Using the MagnaSave buttons, or it'd be, whatever you've bound for MagnaSave to scroll through these options, by the way. Next one is field of view, which we might not change now because this looks about where it needs to be, but I'll show you what it does. If I increase the field of view, you can see it's like it's zooming in. This might be useful if you want to adjust, say, if you're not seeing enough of these sidewalls and you want to have more depth to the image, you might want to tweak the POV. Shrinking the POV down will, of course, make it a lot more square, but you can see what's happening with the flippers. Now, the flippers tend to be what I will focus on when I'm making my initial changes, and then I'll go around the table visually, inspecting it all, and correct things as needed. So we're going to put this back to where it was for now, which was 34. Next one is layback. Layback is essentially, it's how much it lays back. I'll add some now. If you watch the flippers, you see it's kind of like the depth, or the bumpers there. You can see if you make it really extreme, you've got kind of like a, you're increasing almost the Z depth, if you want to think of it that way, but of the toys only, so it's adding an extra depth to the table. The way I tend to have things is so that it's just at the level where that, you see the white space underneath the flippers, get that so it's basically just about hidden, which gives some depth, but also you don't want it to be unrealistic, of course. Next one, this is a new feature, X and Y scale, where this used to only be individual, you can now do them together. What I used to do is the Z offset for this kind of thing, not Z depth by the way, but the Z offset, which would kind of do a similar kind of thing, but what you're actually doing here is stretching the table in both directions at the same time. X scale is just the x-axis itself, Y scale is just the y-axis itself. You can see one is set to 1 and one is set to 0.96 on this table. This will depend on things like the author and whatnot. You might want to try and aim for a 1-to-1 ratio, but it won't always be exactly that, then again depending on how it's built. Z scale, never touch this. It should almost, I mean, in every table I've ever seen, it should be set to 1. If you tweak this, set it back to 1 or revert from your previous version. Yeah, basically, if you were to tweak this, you'll end up, things like physics will break. So ramps could be broken, you could get stuck balls, all kinds of things. It's basically adjusting a scale that you don't need to adjust. X offset, so this will keep the actual stretch of the table the same, but it will offset. So you can see I need to use this for mine to get rid of the apron. So I'm going to get it somewhere centered, and I'm going to zoom in a minute and square this all up. So that's the offset of the Z. Y offset's the same kind of thing. I won't touch that for now. Well, there's actually some on there. I think that's just how he said to say, but we won't touch that for now. Z offsets, like I was saying, so what you could do is instead of using the XY scale, use this Z offset and get it squared up. Lighting emission scale, don't bother with this for now. Lighting range, again, you shouldn't need to touch it, especially on a table like this, which is basically lit perfectly. And the same with the light height. Environmental emission on some tables you might want to touch. I'll show you what it does if I was to increase it. You can see it's like the lamps are giving off more of a glow. If you decrease it, it's like the lamps are giving off less of a glow, all the way off, and you can see exactly what it's done. It's completely blacked out these lights bouncing off of the flippers and whatnot. So this is basically perfect as it was. We're set back to 2, and then we're back round to inclination. So what I'm going to do this stage is just basically tweak this table as I would normally do it, and then we'll have a quick play and confirm it's working and go through the script. So let's say now I've reduced the inclination on this one. The layback can go up a little bit, I feel, but we might also want to add some FOV. When you're dealing with the FOV, incidentally, what can be useful is if you zoom out a bit, do the FOV so that you're not, eclipsing your side view here, and then zoom back in after the fact. I'm really looking for these lanes here, the out lanes to make sure they're not weird, and these bumper rubbers for these pop bumpers, again, just to make sure that it doesn't look unrealistic. So it can be a bit of a balancing act, getting all aspects of the table to look correct, you know, for your particular setup. Obviously, you don't necessarily want to flatten it off too much and have the ball movement unrealistic. So ways to fix that could be either to, you know, settle on something where you're adjusting the POV to how the ball is, or you could prefer to maybe increase, on some tables I've increased the ball speed, which makes the game more difficult, which again is, some people might prefer that, I prefer that in some games. Increasing the ball speed obviously gives you that feeling of gravity. If the gravity feels like it's not realistic, then it might be worth adding some ball speed, but then you're tweaking things like physics. So again, make subtle changes, test it, and then make subtle changes. So the XY scale probably needs to be fixed here. I'll try setting it 1-1, see how that looks. Can be a bit finicky to get these going exactly to a 1. There we go, that's a 1. Looks good. It probably needs to go back to where it was, just a tad. This Y, it seems a little bit over on the right hand side. Now I've got the sidebars on my playfield, so I don't have mine completely centered. So on the video this might look uncentered, but in real life it is centered, or it will be centered. So I'm going to adjust the Y offset first of all, just to try and bring this out over to the left a little bit, and then we'll increase the Y scale perhaps, or we'll zoom it in a bit in fact. You notice the shininess at the back there. You might or might not want that for your POV. Again, the same goes with the side rails, and it depends very much on the table, I find. So some tables I will try and get as much side going as possible, and some tables I'll kind of just crop it all out. It will depend, tends to be depending on how the balls run. I'm going to increase the POV here, and then I'm going to zoom out a bit just to have a quick look. So let's get rid of, I'm going to use the Z offset. As I say, I've done over 90 tables tweaking this Z offset, and I haven't seen any problems doing so. The general advice is not to tweak it from other people in the community, but I've again found that I haven't had a problem with this. So your mileage may vary, it's just the Z scale you never want to touch. I'm going to go to X offset there. I'm also making sure my drain is in the correct place. Now there's kind of an overhang how my table sits, but I basically have it so it's just peaking. You can just see the bottom bit of the wood there. Now the X scale needs to be increased a little ways so that it's matching up on the sides, alongside the Y scale. Or the other option is, of course, you can decrease the X scale and have it zoomed in. Okay. So it's basically centered now, but it looks like I still need to play around a little bit with, for example, the layback, because the flippers look a bit too two-dimensional to me. Somewhere around there looks pretty nice. Might be my FOV change. If we reduce the FOV, see what happens. Again, look at the sidewalls there, but the flipper's now out of whack. If we increase the FOV again, it's like bringing my view into the table. The sweet spot for FOV for most tables is around, for me, falls between, I'd say, around 38 and 43 in most cases. This looks pretty good, and I'm seeing a bit of the side rails there, which I like, the metal work, which I'm very happy. Again, borders included. You look, again, just quickly scanning around from top to bottom. So those latches, they look quite realistic. The channels where the ball goes through looks quite realistic. Pop bumpers look good. Pretty happy with this for a first pass. I might just edge off the FOV a little bit. and instead zoom in. Yeah. Let's increase our Z offset a little bit. Again, these are fine adjustments you're going to end up making. I'm bored if you're watching this and I'm gutting your table, I'm very sorry. X scale, it's about right, and the Y scale just needs to come in a tiny little bit, about there. So I'm pretty happy with this as a first effort. Now the way I'm going to go through this is test it, tweak it, test it, tweak it. For now I'm going to just save what I've got. So pressing Q again. File and save. I'm also going to quickly show you what I do for every table, which is firstly to check the script. Again, we'll bring this onto the back glass monitor, just to make sure there's nothing here. Now on this table there's not much to change. On a lot of tables you'll have various options. For this, nothing I need to change here. These are all just volumes, so that's fine. The other thing I'd normally come in and do is, again, this table is pretty much perfect, but I'd go to the options here after clicking back glass and just check all of this. It is as it needs to be, there's nothing unusual there. Unchecking back glass and you get the main options. I set everything here to default usually, but he's chosen to take off in-game ambient occlusion, so we'll go with what the author said on this one. You might, again, if the table wasn't set up so perfectly, you might want to change the day-night cycle to make it darker or lighter. This level of brightness is good for my use. Sometimes you'll want to come in here and you'll want to change the ball image if there is one assigned, so that's where this can be done. If you need to re-import them, you can. We'll go over that in a different tutorial perhaps. And as I say, if you want to change the dimensions and the slope to make things more difficult or make the ball roll a bit more weighty, or add the slope, this is where you do it. You just increase this range from maybe 5.5 to a 6 or something along those lines. Other than that, there shouldn't really be anything you need to touch on most tables. So that's that. And as I say, I've already saved it. Oh yeah, you can't close that. Close the main editor and just run it as per usual, just to check that it's as you like it. I'll give this a quick ball here. To me, I already think this looks good, and so yeah, you wouldn't want to, I think, touch the physics on this table. Probably, it's I can already tell that it's been dialed in quite nicely. I'll try and lose quickly. It doesn't go on forever. That's smooth, that's nice. God, I love this table already. Thank you, board, for these amazing gifts. Indeed. Excellent. So that's pretty much it. Pretty much it. I don't think there's much else that needs to really be covered on here. Like I say, use F6. When I first started out, I didn't realise that was even a thing. So for the first couple of tables, I was in and out doing this and adjusting the POV. You can see, incidentally, this is kind of giving you an example of where the white space is graphics that have been drawn. The black space is where my table doesn't quite reach again due to the POV, but in real life I've also a couple of millimeters of my screen are being eclipsed by my sidebars, so actually for my uses this is pretty much perfect. So yeah, we'll leave it at that. If you've got any questions, comment and I will try and get around to answering them, or if you've got any requests for other setup type tutorials, again comment and I will get around to doing some other videos. Alright, have a good day, enjoy your visual pinball.